How you doing, folks? You're watching Onward with ONRIE Live, and I'm your host, ONRIE Compen. Beautiful weekend coming up. We got 4th of July here, and I got a great guest in the house today. This is a guy who I have known for a while now. He is one of the most ambitious creators that I have met in a long time. Not only is he making his own comic book series, but he is taking that comic series and he's bringing it to different platforms, including video games. Very ambitious guy, like I said, based in New York, doing everything and anything that comes his way. He is awesome. And it is my pleasure to introduce you guys all to Steven Johnson. Steven, how you doing, sir?
Hey. What's
creator of the EVERBORN series, which I am honored to be editing. I got one of my favorite creators in the house here.
Thank you. We've been trying to do this for a little while now, but you know, the world is falling apart, so that has delayed things a little bit. But I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Do us all a favor. Tell us all who you are, what you're about. Take the center stage, my friend.
All right. Where do I start? Steve Johnson, the man, the mystery, the legend. Okay. I suck at talking about myself, so bear with me. I am the writer and creator and producer of the what I like to call the EVERBORN saga. It takes place over a series of novels, video games, and comics. Our books are mainly this sort of strange alchemy of manga and Western style comics. And we have several series with the comics. So we have Prince of Arcadia, we have Ariel's Adventure, and we have a new upcoming book called The Redlands. It's all telling a different part of the same story. So in Prince of Arcadia, which we're just getting to chapter 3 this month now because it's July. I'm gonna have to talk to my letter about that, make sure we can hit that. But so Prince of Arcadia takes place 30 years before Ariel's Adventure, and then all the other series in the universe, they all take place in what I like to call the Ariel's Adventure timeline. And I've been working on this for the better part of 10 years. But it's just now in the last, let's say 3 years that I've really been able to create some deliverables. Well, I shouldn't say that. 5 years. I would say 5 years we've had deliverables, because we had our first Ariel's World video game release on the Windows Phone back in 2015. And at that time, that's all it was. And I taught myself how to code in order to make that game. Which is a whole other long story.
But an amazing one, I bet.
Yes, it has something to do with turning 30 and wondering what you're doing with your life. So, this is the path I decided to go down. But I will say that everything happens for a reason, and we'll get into that later. But just as in regards to the EVERBORN timeline, Ariel's World was first released on the Windows Phone. I don't know if anyone remembers that. In 2015, we were for a couple of days the #1 paid 2D platformer on the store. And then once that released, I started work on Ariel's Adventure. And that is when I started to put together the story pieces, and I realized I had something there. And so that was the birth of EVERBORN and the multi-tiered or media saga that I'm trying to put together. So
Steven, how do you spell Ariel? Is it A-R? Can you tell us how
it's A-R-I-E-L.
A-R-I-E-L, and then the game is Ariel's Adventure.
Yeah, it's called EVERBORN Ariel's Adventure, which is also the name of our new comic series that is coming out sometime in August or September, depending on whenever I get the last pages from Mike, the artist on that book.
Excellent, excellent. It is, you are just everywhere and doing everything. So tell me, what inspired this grand vision, and how did you make it happen?
Well, okay, let's go back. There's a lot of things that will not seem like they're connected until we get to today. So if you'll bear with me a second.
Of course. Yeah, this is your time. Tell us.
So I graduated college the first time in 2004. But I did not go into the working world. I didn't go into the corporate world yet. I opened a restaurant as soon as I got out of
wow.
college.
What kind of restaurant?
Yeah. It was a Caribbean restaurant. My whole family's from Jamaica.
No shit.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
That's awesome. That's fucking cool. So is it like what part of New York was your restaurant?
In the Bronx.
Okay, right on.
If whoever's from the Bronx, it was the Northeast Bronx, Gun Hill Road, Boston Road area. So then I did that for a bit. I'll just say, don't do business with family.
And I'll second that right there.
And then from there, I got into real estate. And then fast forward a few years later, 2008 happens. And that wasn't really a viable, that wasn't a viable business for me anymore, or at least I saw the writing on the wall, because I saw that, because I primarily worked in Manhattan and it was primarily rentals. And I saw that the market was turning to where people could basically replace me with online apps that could find them places. But I said to myself, well, what could I do and what's the future? And that led me to go back to what my degree was in, which was computer information systems. And I said, well, you know what? I didn't really learn anything in college, but I'm going to teach myself how to code. And I'm going to do that by making a game, because I felt like that was the biggest way I could make a splash. And the first game I made was a game called Star Tennis, which was like, I like to call it Pong on steroids.
Well, what is it? I'm sorry, you kind of cut out there. Putt on
Star Tennis, it was called.
No. I know the game name, but what was it on steroids?
Pong.
Pong on steroids. My apologies.
Yes.
I just missed the word. I apologize. Go ahead.
So from there, I said, what was my next site? And I said I wanted to make a 2D platformer, because that was my favorite thing as a kid to play. So that is when I sort of set my eyes on that. And I think Star Tennis was released in 2012. And then 3 years later, Ariel's World gets released. There was no EVERBORN at that time. It's just called Ariel's World. And after I released that, we did really well, but Windows Phone kind of died. And I said, the next game I'm going to release is going to be multi-platform. It'll be everywhere. And so I start working on the new game, and I had to teach myself a lot of things. And that's when I said, okay, I want this one to have a story. And then I start writing notes, and I start compiling outlines, and then there's timelines, and then there's different families and all these things. I mean, you know what this creative process is like when you go down that road. So I start doing that, and I say, well, there's a lot here, and a lot more than I could put into a game unless I'm making something like The Last of Us. But I said, okay, it's time. I think this thing could live outside of the video game, and it will pepper what we're doing in the game. But really, I think this is a story that people will be interested in. And so I started just doing character bios and creating backgrounds for everyone. And the one that was furthest along was Prince of Arcadia, which follows a character named Baldemar Blackwind. And he is in a struggle for control of the kingdom. Baldemar turned, if you fast forward 30 years into the future, which is when Ariel's adventure comes around, we see that Baldemar is no longer prince, and he is living in hiding with a kid named Ariel. Baldemar hasn't told Ariel who he is, where he comes from, and that, he's the rightful heir to the throne. And what happens in between there is basically the story of Prince of Arcadia. And what happens after we meet up with Baldemar and Ariel is Ariel's adventure. And so we're sort of telling the same story, but we go back and forth in time. And everything that happens in Prince of Arcadia sort of tangentially affects Ariel's adventure.
That's awesome.
And Ariel's adventure, the comic is basically the story of the game. So if you're not into 2D platformers, just read the comics. And if you're not in the comic, just play the game.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to the game for a minute, which is, you're saying it's a 2D platformer.
Yeah.
What is you're playing as Ariel, obviously.
Yes.
And what's Ariel's objective in the game? Is it to reclaim? Because I've had the pleasure of working with you on the first two issues of Prince of Arcadia, and so
in the first few issues of Ariel's adventure, we're sort of seeing the world. We're seeing Arcadia, what it looks like 30 years later. So we're sort of setting the tone and setting what's going on in sort of Ariel's world. No pun intended. But really the premise of that story is that Baldemar gets kidnapped by what I like to call the immortal seraph, also known as the EVERBORN, Magnus. And it's Ariel sets out on a mission to get his uncle back. And we follow him throughout the world, but going on that journey will show Ariel who he is, what he's meant to do, and that he is the key to saving the world.
That's really cool. And especially, like, I've gotten a taste of Baldemar, and he, in these first two issues that I edited for you, he was
quite an asshole.
Yeah, quite an asshole, exactly. So the fact that he mentors somebody who actually ends up saving the world is really kind of a real change in the character, but you're setting up for it well. And I think that's a really important thing to do in storytelling, is to show change in character. When you have someone starting out in one place, kind of like Breaking Bad. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that show.
Yes.
Yeah, but just Walter looking at watching the way Walter White changes from season to season is really, I think, what true storytelling is when you see a character go from point A to point B, and the experiences and the trials that they face change them, changes their perception of the world, and turns them into what they're destined to become as a result of being on this journey.
Yeah, and if anyone that reads or that is reading Prince of Arcadia, you'll know Baldemar for being a pretty selfish and sort of egotistical person. So that is really the crux. What is it that one, made him go into hiding, and two, made him give up everything he had to keep this kid safe until the time was right. I don't know if this will work, but I'm gonna share my screen. I just want to show.
Yeah, no, by all means, please. I love when creators do that. But let's get into something a little. Let's go outside of the work for a minute and discuss you as the creator here. Well, first let's show us what you want to. Look at that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so this is old man Baldemar, and here's a young Ariel and his best friend Riley. Riley is actually based off of my dog that passed away, and I wanted to immortalize him.
That's fucking awesome.
So this is him, and he was a Yorkie, and he had a Napoleon complex, as most small dogs do.
Yes.
And so all of his character traits sort of come through in this character here, Riley. This is Magnus. Mm-hmm. And this here is Alice Ravenwood, who is not a literal child of Magnus, but it's like a follower who does his bidding. And she has a novel that will be coming out maybe later this year or early next year. So that's called EVERBORN: The Remnant. And we'll get into more of that story stuff later, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the world we're putting together for anyone that isn't familiar with the world here. So here you can see the kidnapping that sets Ariel off on his self-discovery journey. This is Magnus coming to get Old Man Baltimore.
There's some really cool stuff.
Here we're just looking at I'm just gonna run through these, but go ahead, ask me the question.
Yeah. So no, absolutely. All right. So what I wanted to ask you is, this is obviously a huge endeavor, like just kind of building out everything.
It's an expensive endeavor too.
Well, yeah, aren't they all? Yeah. Don't get me started on that. But aside from the fact that it's a huge and expensive endeavor, that has not swayed you from going ahead and pursuing your mission. So you had to self-teach yourself a lot of things in order to get there, to the point where you're at now. And what kind of advice do you have for other people who are kind of looking to do the same thing? I mean, this is world building on a whole new level here. I mean, you're all over the place, and you're all over different platforms.
Well, what I'll say, the key for me at least, or the way I have to look at it is, I do this instead of drinking. Not I say that to say, I've never been like a drinker or a smoker, but this is the thing that I spend my time on, right? So while some people may want to go and hang out at a sports bar or a club or go to the movies or whatever, this is what I'll do. This is what I do with my expendable income, and sometimes a little more than expendable income. But the other advice wise, what I would say is start somewhere, right? This didn't start, it's beginning to snowball now, but this didn't start with 3 comics, a novel, and a video game, right? This all started with me saying, hey, I want to learn the code. I'll learn to do that by making a video game because that's fun. And it's really about, if you have a large vision, start small, right? Tell a small story within a larger world and expound from there. So if you think about the end game and how much you want to accomplish, it's so hard to get where you want to go, right? Or it can be daunting if you think about, well, I want to do this, I want to create a multimedia empire, I want to do that. So I always say, instead of thinking about the last step, think about the next step, right? So what is the small thing I can do today to get there? And then those things will build on themselves. And I was telling you my story before of saying I wanted to learn the code, and how we get here today is me making those 2 video games allowed me to put that on my resume and go and walk in. I used to work for Citigroup, and now I'm at another financial firm as a lead software engineer.
Yeah, so you're doing and those that's That's your full-time job
Yeah.
on top of everything else that you're doing. So you're essentially working 2 full careers.
Yes, but the way that honestly, I look at it as one career, because I look at the day job as a way to fund I look at the 9 to 5 as a way to fund the 10 to 6, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And so, but to me, it's all connected. So I wouldn't be able to have the resources to make what I'm making now if I didn't use the initial work that I did to get me in the door to a company that would, pay me a decent salary that'll allow me to take care of my family as well as build this universe that I'm trying to build. So this all, the journey is far from over, but getting here has been a years long process. So,
I go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
No. The main point that I wanted to make is just for anyone that has an idea and is sort of intimidated by the scope of their own idea, or someone that's waiting for someone to give them permission to pursue that dream or idea, don't. I say start small and build your way out, right? They'll always tell you, all the George R.R. Martins and the J.R.R. Tolkien's will tell you, their story, at least at the beginning, is just the tip of the iceberg that gives the illusion that there's a big piece of ice under the water, but it doesn't have to be. Not yet. You build into that. So I say tell a small story in a big world, and don't think about the end game. Think about the small things that you can do. Start thinking about things in terms of deliverables. What can I make and what can I release sooner rather than later?
I want to go to something that you had said earlier about when you start out and you're doing something, it's about building something it's taking those small steps. So, and as of right now, I'm trying to tackle my next project. And the one thing that I want to say first, before I go into all this, because just you hit me with a lot of stuff.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I think you said a lot of great things, but the one thing that I really think is important for everyone who watches this episode to hear is that the greatest wisdom that I think you can pass on, that you've passed on, is so many creators see their day jobs as their day jobs and not complementary to what we do with our creative work. And, prior to pursuing everything that I'm doing full time, I had that day job, and I'm in a position where I can do everything full time because I handle the sales for Yi Sun Shin. If I didn't handle the sales for Yi Sun Shin and someone else did, well, then I'd have to kind of move on to something else. But it's extremely challenging. And the fact that you have to have the right frame of mind, because you can really become demoralized when you think you're a slave to the corporate world. But when you see it as, you know what, I have to farm in order to build on this thing. And, taking on that corporate job not only gives you skills. I learned a lot of skills when I worked in my corporate job, but it also gives you the money, like I couldn't just bootstrap Yi Sun Shin just because I wanted to make it happen, and getting the attention of investors and everything. That took a lot of hard work, and that took showing dedication. It showed, it took commitment. It took all those kinds of things. And I'm sorry, my brain's also fried from it being a long day and everything like that. But I also want to kind of go to the point of, kind of one of the things I'm taking a lot from what you said as well is, I'm starting my next project right now, and I talked to you about it. I've been mentioning it on the show multiple times, and I'm doing superheroes. It's my next project. It's a challenge that I want to put to myself, and I want to show that I want to prove to myself that I can do it. So like one of the things I did today was I went to a comic shop and I hung out there with Ryan Finchberg, who was a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago. And we met up over there and we just kind of browsed and we found this great new comic shop. And it was just picking stuff out that I felt spoke to me. It was really strange because it's been a while since I've been in a comic shop, and really finding things that really speak to you, kind of like what you were saying before. You want to find what speaks to you,
Right.
and work off of that, and then start. And what I really like is how you said, don't think about the end game, start small, because right now I'm thinking about my end game, which is I see this as this. Well,
Right.
what if I just stop worrying about where it's going to end and start with where it begins? And I think that's an important thing right now. And
yeah, and one thing I learn as I go, because this is what we all do, right? You learn new things every day, and as you create, you learn, you learn things about your characters that you didn't know when you created them. You learn things about yourself. But one thing I'm learning is that you should never put don't put your universe before your story, right? You have to tell a compelling story first and foremost. That is the most important thing. So if you start thinking, I want to be, this is a generic thing to say, but people say, I want to be the next Marvel, right? And I want to create a cinematic universe. Maybe you'll get there, and that's fantastic, but you cannot get there unless you tell a compelling story that people want more of. And if you spend all this time world building, but you don't have characters that people can, relate to or empathize with, or just want to hang out with, then it's all for naught. And I have to remind myself of that a lot, because there are times I'm writing and I'll say, well, I know this thing is going to happen 6 issues from now, so let me put that in. Or I know that in another series that I want, I know in Ariel's Adventure, this thing's going to come up, so let me mention it now, right? And you do this thing of foreshadowing, but you just have to be careful. At least I do in the story I'm trying to tell, is to not have the story be all foreshadowing and not character. So I try to make a lot of efforts to if you only read one comic, that'll be enough, right? So you don't have to read. I mean, I want you to, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to read Ariel's Adventure and Prince of Arcadia. If you just pick up Ariel's Adventure, that's enough. I'm happy. You saw the story, and that should be self-contained in itself. If you only read Prince of Arcadia, fantastic. Later on, when the Redlands come out, if that's the Karma is the main character there. If that's your favorite character, just follow her, because it's all the same story from different vantage points, and people will appear in other people's books, but you don't have to read those other books. So that's not it. I don't know if that's really advice. That's just something I have to remind myself of sometimes.
No, I think that's really good. And another thing I want to speak to is the whole thing of what your sacrifice. And it's interesting because, well, no, you mentioned this before, and I really want to speak to this about how you don't drink, you don't smoke. I used to smoke marijuana every fucking day. And if you've seen me at a convention over the last 3 years, I was high the entire time that you saw me.
Nice.
And then, of course, but recently I stopped. And I'm challenging myself to escape reality without the help or aid of any substance, which is, I find this to be very challenging in the sense that Again, I limit myself in my thinking of, okay, just do it, because I want to do it to the best of my ability, and I want to do something that hasn't necessarily been done recently. That's been, and I want to give some, you want to give people something new, so that when they, even if it's a take on something that's already been done, it's a fresh take kind of a thing. Like when you look at say, you know, the Watchmen series, the new one, you know, the new show, like I was saying the other day, it can't be compared to anything.
Yeah,
It's nothing really like it.
I actually was not a fan of that show, and it's you know, I love Regina King, and I love the artistry that was put into it, but I have thoughts on that. We can talk about it if you want.
Well, I'll tell you right now, just straight up, I hated the Watchmen graphic novel. Fuck the graphic novel.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Fuck that dense piece of shit. And I know that anybody who's going to watch this and hear me say that is going to curse me because I'm cursing literature. Fuck that book. It is so goddamn hard to get through, and it's not a mess. I get it. I understand it's a masterpiece and all this other bullshit, but it doesn't speak to me. All right, and I'll straight up say it. You know,
I'll tell you this, and I'm gonna lose some nerd credit here, but I did not read that graphic novel until after Zack Snyder's movie.
Oh!
No, I read it. I read it and I love it. But what I'm saying is I watched the movie first before I read the thing.
So what did you like more?
I like the book more. However, I absolutely loved, like, I'm a Zack Snyder stan, right? So, and I don't really forgive him for Batman versus Superman. We'll see what the Snyder cut of the Justice League is, but apart from that, I love his work. But
I think he did great with 300. I thought that was a great adaptation.
Listen, 300, was it Dawn of the Dead that he did?
I think he did zombie movie. He did do a zombie movie.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it was called Dawn of the Dead, but he did a zombie movie. It was great. Listen, you could look at the Owls of Ga'Hoole. That's a 3D animation movie that he did with actual owls, and they were like photorealistic, so it was kind of disgusting, but it was very well acted. You should check it out. It's a good story there. Sucker Punch is another bad day at the office, I think, for Zack Snyder. Visually stunning. I just hate when people try to compare him to like Michael Bay. And even Mike, like, I don't think that and I personally, before I get to that, I love Man of Steel. To me, it's the best thing the DC EU has ever done. Also, true story, I think when they first announced the DC universe, they called it the DC Film Universe. So that's DCFU and not DCEU. But Man of Steel was the best one there. That said, back to Watchmen, I thought Zack Snyder's movie was great, and I thought the book gave it even more context. But my favorite Alan Moore work is V for Vendetta.
Ah, my man, I'm with you right there. I love V for Vendetta.
And that's another one where I read the comic after I watched the movie, and I hated the movie after I read the comic. V for Vendetta is it's up there for my favorite graphic novel that I've ever read.
I totally agree with you. It is a phenomenal read, and there's truly nothing else like it out there. You know?
Yeah, and you know, it's if you could read it as though it came out today, because the president there, let's just say there are some parallels. That's all I'm going to say. But another book that really left an impression on me was a Jonathan Hickman book called Nightly News.
I've heard of this book. What's it about?
Well, okay. It again, this is fiction. Don't do this. But it is about these group of serial killers who only target corporate journalists, and it's getting to the bottom of why that's happening. So it's a terrible thing, like right now, because there's the everything's so terrible right now. It's scary. So I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression, but I read this before the world turned upside down. So I think people who have an objective mind can look at it, and it just see, this is the problem, right? And I think it becomes hard in today's climate to critique things without being lumped into a group of like bad people, right? And I could say if I told you about the nightly news and its stance on the media and how it is, used for sort of population control and things like that, that's a thing we could all get behind. But you say that now, and then you'll get lumped in with a certain group, which I want nothing to do with, right? But
I think that's something that concerns me, in the sense that I think it's the wrong narrative to be having. See, Stephen, you and I have had a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
Well, not a lot, but you and I have had conversations, and I consider you to be a very intelligent and accomplished individual.
Why, thank you.
Yeah.
Good, sir.
But, the thing that I find is that we are often forced to make decisions of, whether thinking we have to choose between this left or right way of thinking. But
right.
One of the things that I think makes this country great, and one of the reasons why I'm a proud American, is the fact that I don't have to subscribe to either side. That's their.
Have you been on the internet?
Oh, absolutely. And they can do. Hey, look, I've been on the internet. Everybody can choose what they want to choose or say what they want to say. But if I don't want to partake in the conversation, I don't have to. And that's the beauty. True. This is the beauty of being an American. But this is also the beauty of being a creator. And one of the things that I think is wonderful about what we're doing, particularly you, more so than even me, because so far my stories are rooted in things that actually happen, which is grounded in reality. What you have done is you've provided a perfect vessel for escapism, which I think is more important than anything in the world. Because what is reality now? You couldn't make this shit up. Right. It's like, Jesus Christ, where the fuck?
No. If you wrote this 4 years ago, where we were today, an editor would say, "Hey, you're gonna have to tone that back a little."
Yeah,
bit.
Well, I agree.
Extreme incredulity here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we talked about how some of these movements have been hijacked, and we won't go into which ones or whatever the case is. But
let's please not.
Yeah, let's not. But I will say this: as an individual, when we talk to each other. And I think this is across the platform. When person A talks to person B and talks to person C, outside of these fucking screens, when we talk to each other, where we can actually hear each other's voices, where we can actually interact, which is something that we have not been able to do for a long time because of this stupid fucking virus, which half of the people think doesn't exist at all, and other people are so terrified of it that they're bunkered up. And who's right? They're both right. People who are bunkered up are afraid for their lives for good reason. People who are not afraid of this virus are not afraid of it for good reasons too. They don't give a fuck. It only affects a very small percentage of people. So it's understandable that, people are, so divided about this. But then you have the elections coming up. That's another divisive thing. And then you have all these other issues that are also divisive. And you have stuff going on within the comic book industry that has been driving a wedge between people, and it's all understandable, of course, but if you're not involved in the situation directly, like, for example, like this situation with comic book creators who have been caught red-handed through other creators who have basically said, this person harassed me or did something, right. It's really, and I hate to say it, it's their word versus the other person's word. And at that point, you can only you make a decision whose voice you want to hear. Now, I believe the people who have come forward have been brave enough to say what they really feel. And I think it's important that they've said what they did, because if you look at some of the people who have been called out, not all of them, but some of them, you get a sense that, yeah, this guy, did this. And I had interactions with some of the creators, which again, I won't say who or point any fingers, but I could totally believe that what happened is true. But I don't know if it happened. I'm not going to jump on that creator and be like, you know what, this guy did this to me and I had that experience with him, so now I'm going to call him out too, because he never sexually harassed me. So I can't speak to that. And I think it's better to remain silent in those situations. You hear the stories of what happened. You want to express some sympathy or some understanding, or say, like, look, we need as an industry to possibly look at how things are done and work on improving that. I'm all for voicing that. But I think when we start to get on this path of destroy this person's life, or this person doesn't agree with me, I can no longer talk to them, I can no longer be their friend, we're really just behaving like fucking children, really.
I mean, I think it's a little bit worse. So this is and this is why these things become hard to talk about, right? Because we can say a very normal thing, which is, if there's an accusation, it should be vetted, we should look into it, and things should happen according to the way they should happen, right? It's a normal thing to say.
Right.
So if you say, I'm going to reserve judgment until there is an investigation, I'm not going to pile on someone, but I am going to, take every accusation seriously, cool. But the moment you say, hold on, I need more evidence, then it's like, there's this other energy around things. And I but I think most people would agree, that, we should absolutely take, every claim seriously.
Absolutely. And it needs to be investigated by the proper people, though, not by Joe Q public, but it should be.
That's true. But the thing that I want to focus on really, right, is a lot of people, like, we all should make it our business to understand that people that are screaming on the internet, that's not really real life.
No,
right?
It's not, because we don't behave like that. That's a very good point.
Most people, because when the Me Too movement was like a big deal. Not saying it's not anymore, but I mean, when it was,
it's huge right now in comics.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
So, but what the thing. So right now, okay, it's a big deal. It's always a big deal. It should always be a big deal.
No, right? I think we're worried about saying the wrong thing, but I think it can be said. Yeah, we're tap dancing. There's no reason for. I don't think we need to worry about doing that, because I think you and I are reasonable men, and I think that we both respect where people are coming from in both sides of this movement. We're not trying to say that women who have been sexually accosted by disrespectful men in the industry, we're not saying that didn't happen. It did absolutely happen. And the fact that these voices are coming out is an important thing, and they should not be ignored. Can we agree on that?
We can. It's just that the other side of it is,
there you go.
Here, this is it. That's where I'm done now. No, but the other side of it is, look what happened in Central Park with the dog walker, right? The other day, right? Look what happened with Chris Hardwick, right? To say we should take something seriously versus we should just believe everything that someone says, those are two different things. And I think that if we should I think we should move on. Is what I think. But
I agree. You know what? We can, because I honestly, the last thing I want to do for any special guest, and the main reason why I brought you on the show was, to talk about your creative stuff. But the one thing that I also don't want to keep you from doing is expressing yourself. But I think that we're in such a I think you're right. It's like we're in this place right now where we can't say anything because we're afraid of the impact it has. But I want to ask you.
One point though, and that's that you.
Yeah,
That's what I was trying to come to before. You said,
please.
People are behaving like children. I think it's worse than children. I really think it is. And again, this is how you get lumped in with the assholes. But it's kind of, it's like it's forced conformity, right? You need
silence
to
is violence.
Yeah, you need to think and talk at the way we want you to think and talk. And when we say, you should speak about something, you need to speak about it, or you're a terrible person.
You're part of the yeah,
right.
But, I want to mention something
that's I think like Spanish Inquisition shit.
I agree.
Right? Like it's just like heretic, right?
No, you can't do that. I think the real way to make peace and to make steps forward is to find common ground. And you know who did this really, really wonderfully is Daryl Davis. There's a great documentary about him on Netflix. He's a black man who derobed I think over 100 Ku Klux Klan members by coming up to them and simply finding common ground with them, having conversations with them,
he is my spirit animal. I agree with him in principle, but it couldn't be me. There's
it can't be.
Things.
But you see, I think
cool. I
think he sets.
And I'm happy for the people's lives that he changed.
Absolutely, but let's look at it. I don't think that everybody has to be Daryl Davis. I don't think everybody can be Daryl Davis.
I do agree, though, and I sent this to you in a text the other day. Most people agree on 80% of shit. We just keep fighting because we focus on the 20%, right? And that really is the problem. And, one could argue that is by design, because if you and I are fighting each other, then we're not looking at whose hands is in our pocket, right? And, we have to, what do you think is the eventuality? If you just look at the state of, let's not even look at the world, just America, the state of America right now, what is the eventuality? Where does this lead? If you look at the trajectory that we're on now.
Well, I think that what we're clearly seeing here is a war going on by the radical left and the radical right. And they make up this really small percentage, and they are manipulating a mass majority of people who truly want just peace and want to be able to get back to their lives and go back to their jobs and spend time with their families and watch movies and watch sports and enjoy their lives. What's really making things so heated right now is the fact that we are missing something that I think is very important: sport. Sport unites us. Because when we come together through sport. When you're a Chicago Bulls fan, it doesn't matter if you're black or white or whatever. When you're a New York Yankees fan, it doesn't matter if you're black or white, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter, because everybody comes together to root for the team, and
you know what?
We're missing that.
To that point, I've never, since Jordan retired, I actually just gave up on sports as a whole.
Yeah, well, same here. That's how it was for me.
That said, this is why I think people discount the power of these Marvel movies, because people call them paint by numbers, which they are not.
No, they're fucking hell no.
And
that's another thing we're missing, by the way, is movies.
Yeah. No, but I think that's an insult to what they're doing over there in the MCU, in that, those movies are the one place where you see all walks of people getting together and cheering and being happy for the same thing. I cannot tell you, you go see Infinity War, you go see Endgame, you go see Black Panther. People are just there happy about one thing. And I can scarcely point you to any one thing or event that had people screaming and happy and happy to talk afterwards and hang out and dressing up and stuff. For, look at when Cap picked up Thor's hammer.
Oh, dude,
Like
I'm at that was a defining moment. But for me, it was just even the idea of all the superheroes coming back and the epic music and the hope and everything of all these. Now the superheroes are finally united, and they're I think
but
I
and that's
agree.
what I mean. Think about the experience you have when you go to those movies, the before and after, the talking to friends, making new friends. It's really a
And
communal experience,
arguing
right?
about that rather
But it
than arguing about race. I
but
mean, or
even those arguments are not, those are the fun kind of arguments that
yeah, you're not going to go and
you
shoot
want to
somebody
have.
because you thought that Tony Stark should have died and not
Well,
Spider-Man in Infinity
listen,
War.
hold on. Don't get me started on how they did the Hulk dirty.
Absolutely. I agree
I'll
with you.
start a
They
fight about
totally
that,
fucked with the Hulk there. He
right?
didn't get any revenge, and he didn't do anything
He
to
didn't
Thanos.
get it. He didn't even get an action scene. But that's neither
No.
here nor there, because I'm
Yeah.
gonna get myself worked up.
Actually, dude, I was just as worked up as you. So was Dak, and we both were really mad about that because the Hulk did get fucked, really hard.
I gave him the benefit of the doubt at the end of Infinity War. I said, you know what? It's because they want him to come back and he's gonna have a big moment. Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And you have to understand, in a movie that is specifically designed as fan service, a movie that gave everyone a moment. They gave Scarlet Witch a moment. They had the whole the Lady Avengers that all happened to be in the same place on the battlefield at the same time. They gave that a moment.
I wonder if that was a coincidence.
The rescue moment. They gave the Captain Marvel the moment when she came. You couldn't give Hulk like 30 seconds of him just hulking out.
Oh, absolutely.
Nothing.
I agree. And just him just completely losing it, or them releasing the Hulk from the past on Thanos. And
whatever.
They just something. They could have done anything. And I agree with you there. And they actually tried to justify why they did that bullshit. And I agree with you. But you see, these are the kinds of conversations, my friend, that we're not having anymore because everything is stopped. But look at sports, too. Sports offers those things. And I'm not a sports fan. I'm with you there. But sports is a huge industry. Going to comic conventions, that's a huge industry. Going where you can interact with people. We're not interacting anymore. We're dying to do it, though. I'll tell you that. When I was in Gatlinburg a couple weeks ago, like I told you, everybody's out in mass. Now, is it right or wrong that those people were out there? It's both. It's probably wrong, that everybody's congregating as if nothing happened. They probably should have been wearing masks for the most part. Some people were, most people were not. But the thing is,
I hate that masks have become like a political thing, right? I think, like, look, and we had this conversation. It is very easy, like me, right? This thing hasn't really affected me except that I don't have to travel 90 minutes each way to work.
I think
right?
I think it has. I think it has affected you.
It has. But when I say it affected me, I mean my livelihood, right?
Sure.
And I think it's very easy to armchair quarterback and say, "Hey, stay in. You shouldn't be working," right? Like that. I don't think that's fair for people I don't think that's fair for anyone that's in my position or any other position that doesn't have to go out to say, hey, you shouldn't go and do what you need to do to feed your family.
Yeah, everybody
right?
says I'm a non-essential worker.
Right.
Like straight up. The government.
But this is what I mean. Are your children's mouths not essential to feed? Right. And so so I'll say that, right? But in the event that we do have to go out, and I think anyone who needs to actually work to, provide and, not end up homeless, like they should be able to work. But we should also say this is serious and we need to take precautions and not have an issue with when you just put on a fucking mask, right? If we got to go out and everybody who needs to work should be able to work. If we are saying we have to go out, then put on a mask. It's not hard.
No, it's not.
There are, if it wasn't so political, we could all get together and figure out the best
I
way
agree with
where
you.
people could work and we could take the safety precautions that we need to make. But that's not where we are because we're stupid.
Well, you know, the funny thing is that I don't think we're stupid. I think that I believe in.
I'm sorry, the people on TV are stupid.
The people on TV. There you go. Yeah, but you know, it's funny. One of my wife's very good friends. She came from South Carolina to come be with her family in Chicago for the weekend, and she's starting a local group within her church to talk about issues of segregation within the church, because you know her church is predominantly white, and the black churches are, they don't ever come together. There's no way for them to do so, and she's trying to kind of like talk about that a little bit, and one of the things that I heard her say that I really took a lot from was the fact that she knew that there's a huge age gap. There's older churchgoers and younger churchgoers, and the thing is that you have to find a way to remove certain words or phrases that are going to trigger people. And one of those triggers is, we have to do this. You are wrong because of this. When we take things like that out and we change it by saying, how can we do this differently? How can we show this? I think what that changes is it allows everybody to step up and contribute something. And because I think we all want to live in harmony. I don't think we want to live in a world where we don't accept one another. I certainly don't want to live in a world like that.
The problem is there's so much money to be made in division.
Yes, there is.
Right. And this is the thing. How many YouTube channels have you seen that are just devoted to like not liking something? Right. Like how many, what is the engagement on a post that is either showing something positive versus something negative, either someone complaining or sharing a video of a tragedy or whatever? What does it say about us as human beings that we gravitate more towards the negative things, or we're more active about the negative things than the positive things?
Absolutely. When we're on a highway and there's a car accident and there's traffic and everything,
right?
And then you get up to the place where the police car is. Yeah, but you can't stop but fucking turn your head and look at what you
because it's like,
going on. You got to see it.
I had to wait.
What held me up? Exactly. I got to see it. I got to fucking see it.
But that. The thing, though, is what I wonder is it really sort of human nature, or are we being programmed that way? And I say that to say, you click on one, negative post on Facebook, or watch one negative video. Like, so for example, there was this big controversy with The Last of Us 2, right? I watched one Last of Us 2 review and I felt like I was back in the days of Captain Marvel, right? My feed is inundated with these hate videos. And that's the thing. They know that they're getting clicks, but are they getting clicks because people are more engaging with it, or are they getting clicks because that is what the algorithm is designed to surface to people, right? Because everything, see, this is the one thing, when I say what's happening on the internet is not the real world, right? Anything you see on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter is designed towards what they think you'll click on. It's not actually what's happening in the real world. And you may wonder, why do you see people that get so angry, and why do you see people that feel like the world is this crazy place? But I walk outside and I'm fine. I talk to my neighbors, right? They could be white, they could be black, whatever. So what the hell is going on there? And I think what happens is people go and they get into their bubbles, right? And then once you're in the bubble, there's nobody to tell you, hey, you know, Steve, you're a dumbass. That's not a good idea, right? It's everybody that says yes. You know what I mean? Everybody is saying yes. Go ahead. You're right. And if you fall down the hole, let's say I believe that, you know, the country is being invaded, right, by migrants, right? You know what I'm going to get in my feed because I clicked on 1 or 2 videos about that, just looking at what, you know, the facts of immigration were. I'm going to see all of these things at the border, and I'm going to see all of these people talking about how people are taking jobs. And then I begin to believe that that is the real world.
Absolutely.
Right? And then I'll comment on things, and then I'll make friends that believe the same thing. And we don't have to listen to Henri who says, hey, that's not what the real world is. Because you know what? We have our own clique now. Right. Yeah. And there's so much of that going on. And I think that is what is really driving us apart. But then that's going to beg the question is the algorithm feeding us what we want, or is it training us? So, and if it is feeding us what we want, is it better to go back to the days where you had to depend on whatever the networks were showing you to control what you view? Meaning, I can view whatever I want, but that allows me to, you know, like me personally, I use YouTube to, you know, learn how to code. That's how I taught myself to code. YouTube. It's the greatest tool in the history of mankind, but it, you know, it can be used for foolishness and it can be used to waste time. So should we have that power, or do we need to go back to the days of the network where they had to have TV? You remember Thundercats and He-Man and things like that?
Hell yeah.
You remember they had to put a moral at the end of every story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
There's no,
right?
Yeah.
And so that wasn't because the creators wanted it. There was like a law. You had to do that because if you had a program that was designed to promote things to kids, which is the toys that they sold off those shows, you had to put a positive message at the end of every episode. Right? But we only had certain choices of what we could watch. There was only a certain number of channels and things came on in a certain number of times. Now I can go and watch what I want, when I want, and ignore anything that doesn't fit with my worldview. And I can trick myself into thinking I am under attack. I can trick myself into thinking you're an asshole. And anyone that is not in my clique is the enemy. And
I agree with that.
I don't see how we get out of that.
I see how we get out of that. We get out of the fucking house. We leave these fucking screens because it's like what you're saying. When you go out, everything's normal, right? And I think once we beat this fucking virus, or however it's going to look, you know, I do have great faith that there will be a vaccine that'll come out eventually. And after that point, it's just like
probably not this year though.
Yeah, probably not this year. Thing. You know, that's the thing too. But I also think that we'll survive. The mass majority of people will survive this. And once we get back out there, you know, I think that things will kind of simmer down. We have to stop looking because we're tricking ourselves into thinking that things are going to get worse. We're convincing ourselves. We're buying that narrative. Everything's going to get worse. It'll get worse. It'll get worse. We don't have to own that. We don't have to own that.
That's true. But I don't think we need to turn the screens off.
I don't think we need to either. I don't think we can. I don't think we can. I agree with that.
But I think we can use them to actually learn, right? So to me, I don't get any of that. I'm very careful with what I click on YouTube. Like, so if I see this like a video with some politics stuff or like, I don't even want to see that, right? Because then I click on it and now I get caught by the algorithm and that's all I get. So what my YouTube feed is all about, it's just like different, you know, it's different technology stuff. Like I'm studying for an AWS, which is Amazon Web Services certification right now. Those are the videos I get, right? Because I know, not saying I know how, you know, I don't know how those algorithms are written, but I know that if I click on one of them, it's going to be a whole shit show, right? and my Twitter feed is all about the new Xbox and PlayStation that's coming out. That's it, because I don't want to engage, and I go out of my way to not engage with that division. I try to focus on the positive things that I like, and that's what I comment on. Like, if you're an asshole on the internet, cool, I'm happy for you. I'm just not going to comment. And I have to fight myself sometimes, because I see people say ridiculous things, and I say, you know what? That's not worth my time. I can't do it.
Yeah, dude, I got so much respect and love for what you just said. I hate to do this, but we're at the end of the show now. But I think that this all comes back. What you just said all comes back to what you started with, is that we need to focus on building ourselves. Use the screens for productive use, which is what we originally wanted. Which is essentially what technology is for.
We can learn so much. You can learn literally anything you want in the world, and we're using it for
non-constructive. Yeah, for non-constructive things. All right, my friend, do me a favor. Hopefully, I can tell you this without a measure of a doubt. Everybody who's watching any episode of Onward with ONRIE, including this one right here, is watching it because they're looking to better themselves in some form or fashion. And that's what it's all about. And I think we learned a lot from you today. Do us a favor. Tell us where we can find you, because I think people should be following you from here on out. So
I hope so.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I would say you can find me on the EVERBORN on Instagram. That's where we have the most followers there. Also at the EVERBORN on Facebook, and on Twitter, it's also the EVERBORN. But if you want to get to me personally, it's Steve A.M. Johnson. But more importantly, look for Prince of Arcadia and soon the Ariel's Adventure Comics at everbornsaga.com. That's where you can find all our books. You want a shirt like this, you can get one. We have a bunch of them with all the artwork I was showing earlier. I don't know if you guys can see the screen I'm sharing. I'm showing you what the game looks like. But yeah, everbornsaga.com, and you'll sort of get to know everything we have going on.
And you did this by yourself. I think
all me. I'm the only person coding on this thing.
You know what? And that just goes to show you, if you're going to use technology, use it for something productive. I mean, this is it right here, folks. I mean, you know, Stephen, you're a self-made man, and this is just goes to show it. It doesn't matter what you do. I just see you.
Oh, one other thing I want to say. Shout out to Steve Jr. I'm also a single father.
Right on, brother. So you're calling out to your son, and he's 19 years old now, right?
19, yep.
And he's going into college and everything.
Already in there, studying the same thing I did, computer information systems.
That's awesome. See, like father, like son. My friend, thank you so much for coming on the show. Do me a favor, hang up backstage. I'll come right back there, and we'll chat a little bit more. Let me just close off the show here. All right, hang tight here.
All right.
I'm just gonna put you on the back here. All right, there we go. What a great episode from a very innovative guy. You know, I think it's very important for us all to be thinking about every time we get on to a computer screen, what our purpose is. Are we just trying to gain information? Are we trying to become better people? Or are we just fucking off? And I think it's important to do a little bit of everything. But I think it's most important not to get sucked up in the negative feelings. The purpose of the internet was to provide us with a tool so that we could improve ourselves. And just talking to Stephen and seeing what he's doing is a symbol of that. I mean, he is living by that code. He's always looking for ways to better himself, and it's a pleasure working with him. He's honestly a very, very bright guy. He's got huge plans for everything he's doing with the EVERBORN saga, and it's an honor to be a part of it, to help him get to where he's going. All right, folks, 4th of July weekend. Let's try and have a good time this weekend, all right? No trouble, no problems. Let's spend some time with our family. Let's show some appreciation for the things that we have in life. I bought a whole bunch of comics this weekend. I'm starting to have a glimmer of an idea that I hope will develop into what will be my next comic book series. I'm going to use this time over the weekend to try and be a little bit productive, to spend some time with my family, and to enjoy life. Because you know what? We only get to do this once. And whatever problems we have will be there. They'll be waiting for us when the weekend's over. But let's all have a peaceful weekend. I'm hoping for that for all of you. And be safe, be healthy. And as always, onward to victory. We'll be back next week with brand new episodes, all right? Onward to victory again.